Good morning, Brian.
Hey, Haley.
How are you today?
Good, thanks.
Wonderful.
And you?
I'm good. Good.
Yeah.
Having those moments where you're just like, everything is good right now.
Yeah.
So we have packed agenda today. There are a couple topics that we wanted to talk about, and I think we're going to be able to kind of do a full circle with them in the magical way that our calls always end up being wonderful circles. So I think starting with something that I think not just think me, but I think it's something that is you're passionate about and many other people are passionate about, is this idea of freedom of speech. And I received this quote from Noam Chomsky. If you believe in the freedom of speech, you believe in the freedom of speech for views you don't like. Goebbels was in favor of freedom of speech for views he liked. So was Stalin. If you're in favor of the freedom of speech, that means you are in favor of freedom of speech precisely for views you despise.
And I agree with that.
And I think it's a very interesting quote, an idea of we're all very much into I have the right. Freedom of speech is a constitutional right here in the US. Yet when it's an opposing view, we very quickly feel the urge to revoke that card.
Well, Haley, I think that there needs to be guidelines or boundaries on freedom of speech. For instance, the classic example of you can't yell fire in a movie theater. It's against the law to do that because you're causing panic, right? People whose speech is intended to create violence against others, right? I think that crosses a line. I don't think we have the freedom to do that. If for instance, let's say I went on the air and I said over and over, every time I had the chance, Hayley Evans must die, right? Now, you could say, well, you're creating this. You have no idea, Brian, how many death threats I've gotten. I'm afraid to walk outside. Do I have the right to say that, or are there limits on that?
Where I go to immediately is then there is no freedom of speech. Because once we put conditions on it, where is the freedom? And I don't ask that because I have the answer. That's sort of where I have the question is, what does freedom of speech mean if we put conditions on what freedom of speech means?
And I don't have the answer to that either. I do believe that the answer is personal. We talk about right thought, right speech, right action. I'm responsible for my own speech. I have the freedom to say things that are awful, mean, hateful, incite emotions in others that are destructive. I have I have the ability to do that. And I have to constantly be vigilant about what I say and how I say it. I may have the freedom from the culture, from society, to say whatever I want, but I have the responsibility on my journey of the soul to make sure that what comes out of me is loving and healing, and not destructive. What do you think about that?
And I agree with that. I think, what you're speaking about, yes, we do have freedom of speech, meaning everybody has the freedom to speak their truth and their thoughts. Ultimately, it is a personal decision about what those words are. And I think that's where integrity comes in, love comes in, and getting really clear, sort of doing that work, that self-work, to get really clear on what that means to you and what is the world that you are creating. How are you creating it? I think ultimately most humans, the majority of the humans, want peace. They want their bit of land, and they want their children to grow up safely, to be able to live a good life.
Yes.
We get a little bit shaky when we're like, that can be reached through peace or that can be reached through war. And there's a little bit of a difference there. And I think this sort of blends into that perfection of, is there such thing as perfect freedom of speech? And if you follow the arc that we're going on, then do we hold ourselves accountable to that perfection of every single time I have to be perfectly aligned with my integrity, my speech?
And so you have the question is can I be punished by society for saying something? And the answer is yes to that, depending upon
I think you can.
the circumstances. There generally is a freedom to speak your mind, but I think when you involve others and their safety in it, then for instance, in the House of Representatives, there's one representative that is calling another a terrorist, a Muslim terrorist. Should that person lose committee appointments for breaking the decorum of the House? Is freedom of speech guaranteed everywhere at all times? No, right? In the Army,
No.
colonel is speaking and the private says, well, you know what, excuse me, it's really hot today.
I feel like this.
Yeah, you're going to the break. Well, wait, what about freedom of speech? Don't I have the right to say whatever I want anytime I want? No, there are always conditions on that, right?
And I think, all those conditions is like overarching, we have this freedom of speech. And then below that, we have the rules or the norms of each of the different sort of circumstances.
Yes.
And I think, freedom of speech, there are always circumstances. There's always a reaction for an effect for the things that you say and for the things that you do. It's being able to be aware of that and take responsibility for that once it manifests.
Well, Hayley, to give you a contemporary example, there's a search for a woman who was involved in Nazi propaganda filmmaking. And, she claims it was just art. But the people going after her claim, no, she was perpetuating and instigating with her art the slaughter of people. So does she have the freedom of speech to make these films? I would say no. I would say that if you cross a line, there's got to be a line that when you cross it, the culture says together, no, that, you went too far. That's.
I think she has, and I would differ there. I think she has the freedom to say that. In saying that, she is accountable for how it's perceived by the culture that she puts it into. And if that culture determines this is against our norms, she's responsible. She's accountable for her actions. And I think that's where freedom of speech is there, but you need to be accountable for what you're saying and where you're saying it.
So the people who constantly spoke to incite the riot in the nation's capital, we could say they have freedom of speech, but they're being investigated for their participation and their instigation. This freedom of speech, when one is charged with instigating, can you have the defense of, well, I can say anything I want.
I think you can, again, the way that I look at it, and it's just, the reason why I brought it up today is it's something that I'm just kind of investigating where I am with it. They have the right to say it. In saying it, they must be accountable for their actions and the impact that it had.
Okay.
And I
So
think
you have
the
the, so you have the right, you have the right to breathe.
you have the right to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
You have the right to sing
But if
the song you want to sing.
right.
But if you knowingly are singing that and it hurts somebody, knowing that your impact is going to hurt somebody and your intention is to hurt somebody, regardless of the speech, you are held accountable for your actions.
Yes, if you have the right to blow air out of your mouth, but if you're blowing on a flame to burn down someone's house,
you're accountable for that action.
Yes. Well, didn't I have the right to blow just because there was a flame nearby? No.
You had a right to blow.
Yeah.
Did you have a right to blow with the intention of hurting somebody? That
No.
I think is the question mark.
Yeah, and that's where we count on government to protect us.
But yeah, and I think that's why we have these societal laws that are to protect and to sort of clarify that line where, yes, you have freedom of speech, but your intention was to cause harm. That's not part of the society that we're building.
Right. But it depends on which society you live in. In China,
yeah,
in India, there aren't protections often of women, sexual assault on women, very common.
I mean, in the US too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that there, in this day and age, there's not much difference between the US and any other country in terms of human rights laws.
So for me, going back to your point, regardless of what the state says, regardless of what the organization you're in says, you're responsible personally on this journey of the soul, right? To speak, to use right speech, to have what you're saying create positive effect and not be hurtful, painful. Well, it can be painful.
It can, and it's such an interesting discussion or debate, because I think in that, you and I and many others that are on what we consider the hero's journey, it is more aligned with love and being that kind of person that is conscious of the impact and hoping that the impact benefits the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the people that cause destruction, a lot of the time their destruction is caused because they believe their path is creating the greater good.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with that, but
I think that's where that perfection comes in.
Yeah.
Is the perfect path?
I'll give you an example. On my Facebook page, it's known that this is a nice, safe, loving space.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody posts something that I find offensive, they don't have freedom of speech on my Facebook page. They're gone.
Mm-hmm.
Their comment is edited, it's gone, and they're blocked because
they're canceled.
Yeah, you're out because, and they can say, well, what about freedom of speech? Yeah, you have freedom of speech on your own Facebook page.
Yes.
Not on mine.
No. And I think that even takes, those societal norms you have created and taking responsibility for what you create on your Facebook. You've created a culture, you've created a little world. Mm-hmm. It is your world. You determine the rules for the people that are coming in and out of your world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that's the same as boundaries.
Same thing in your home.
Same thing in your home. Same thing for your family and your friends.
Yeah, somebody comes in and creates negative energy,
You're out.
they don't get invited again. And
Yeah.
if it persists, you say something.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with where this is going. Let's change the subject.
And I think that's where the equality comes in, is I have the divine right, or the right by the US Constitution, to the freedom of the speech and to protect my homestead. So do you.
Mm-hmm.
Me saying you can't come onto my little home and putting a boundary up does not take away from your right to exactly the same rule. It just means that you can't be on my land, in my world.
Well, or what about in my school? There's an effort in Texas to ban hundreds of books because they, in high school and grade school, because they deal honestly with women, gender issues, sexual orientation. So there's no freedom of speech in the mind of the legislator who's pushing to have books banned, right? A library obviously has the right to reject a book based upon their standards, right? But if it's pornography, for instance, and it's a children's library, well, obviously, this is not going to be in our library. Well, what about freedom of speech? Oh, you have the right to go speak, but not here, right?
Right.
It's not going to let me here. It's, again, this is a really good subject for me in the broader sense, because our calling is our personal journey.
Mm-hmm.
I believe,
it is a personal journey,
right? I'm just here, right? I'm not, we can have philosophical discussions about speech, but when it comes down to it, what I'm responsible for is the garden that surrounds me.
Mm-hmm.
August Gold used that expression, I think it's Buddhist, the other day when she was speaking. And
did you freeze? Brian? Brian, are you there? So Brian, you were talking about August Gold and the garden, like we're responsible for our garden.
Yes. So going back to the issue of speech, in my garden, I have to be very aware that if I want things to grow, what comes out of my mouth needs to be nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Otherwise, everything is going to be dead. The poison that comes forth. And so the garden can be the home you're growing up in, and your parents' vile comments creates for you a horrible setting
Mm-hmm.
to find yourself. And so I would argue, while they have a right to freedom of speech, they certainly need to know the impact of what they're doing on everyone around them. And they may not care, but I can't do anything about that. Right. All I can do, I can only role model, right? So that when people come into Raise in My Home and feel love and gratitude, between Ray and me, and they can leave saying, I really like, Bill Konigsberg, who we've had on the program, that young adult author, is staying with us. And every morning, Ray and I read, from the Tao Te Ching, and we say the prayer of St. Francis. And Bill loves that, and lighting the cone of incense and lighting the candle. And we light the cone of incense and the candle often for people who have hurt us,
Mm-hmm.
To bless them and to get out of us, whatever negative feelings we're having. So, I love the discussion on freedom of speech, but my primary focus is on my speech.
And I think that, that's where I agree with you. I think if we are more conscious of our speech, and we are standing courageously to say, I will be responsible and accountable for the impact of my speech, which I think is the power of the word, then we're upholding sort of that essence of the freedom of the speech for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
And the path we walk alone, but we walk with so many.
Yes, and we're attracted to people who, what comes out of their mouth, we find to be nurturing.
And that becomes part of our community.
It becomes a political party, right? Right. I mean, there was a discussion, we had a bunch of people, we all went to a movie, Come On, and we were sitting around the living room last night talking about how Democrats tend to be nicer. They're not, we don't play as dirty politics. And that's why the Republicans keep winning, because they'll say whatever they want to say. And that's not been how the Democrat, and I am attracted to that about Democrats. But I also think, oh my God, you're missing this, you're missing that. But that's the warrior in me, that wants to win the battle. Well, okay, come back to your own garden. I'm just here. I'm not in charge. And
you are in charge
of my garden. Right. So if we can, can we transition?
I think it's a good segue into your subject.
Yeah, I wanted to, I'm writing now about imperfection. I don't know, I think we talked about it. As you get older, it's more likely that if you see a spot on your shirt or shorts, rather than changing before you go to the grocery store, you think, oh, come on, it's a spot, big deal. When you're younger, absolutely not. When we were really young, if we had a pimple, that could stop us from going to a dance, especially right on the tip of your nose. All of us had Clearasil to cover up our, right? Imperfections were not good. They were just
right. We do not accept imperfection.
No, and so, but as you get older, imperfections are less an issue for you. In fact, the Japanese embrace imperfections.
Yeah.
There's a term called Wabi, W-A-B-I -Sabi, S-A-B-I. And it means accepting beauty that is imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete.
I love it. And I think it's the Japanese too, that when something breaks,
yes,
they mend it with gold.
With gold, yes. And that's called K-I-N-T, kintsugi.
Yeah.
And it's and it means to join with gold. And sometimes, Hayley, they'll deliberately break a piece, and so that they have a visual of the gold holding together the pieces, underlying the belief that imperfection, the world is perfect in its imperfections.
Yeah. And so are we. So what were you, before I ramble into my stuff, what was your sort of, where are you with this right now in terms of writing about it?
I'm wanting to write about it because I think it's a phenomena for older people more than it is for younger people. When I talk about it, I mean, when I was younger and I would see my folks, head out the door with some, a spot or something, I'd be more, what are people going to think? Oh my God, get back in here. Come on, change your shirt. If we hadn't been visiting, they would have just gone off and had an Easter time. But they were okay with it. And I was mortified because I was still in this world of perfection. And if we were having a dinner party, one of the things that happened with COVID containment is it freed me from perfectionism.
A lot of people like let go some perfection.
Yes. So, before, when people would come to visit or come for dinner, my feeling and raises, it has to be a 5-star experience. Well, that means that nothing is wrong. Nothing is out of place. They're not going to find any dust. They're not going to see a leaf on the ground. Nothing will distract them from this experience. And boy, is that exhausting.
Yeah.
And it creates resentment, especially as you get older and your back hurts as you're bending down to pick up whatever it is you think is going to throw off their experience. And you get to the point where you say, you know what, those leaves are okay.
Right. And then you also get really mad because people don't say thank you in a way that seems to reflect how great the experience was.
There are very few people who have come into our home who have stopped and seen and acknowledged all the work that goes into creating the experience. And it's really fun when you get them, because they speak up and you think, wow, somebody really noticed it and appreciated it. But if you're doing it to get the applause, then you have the wrong motivation.
Right.
Right. So going back to why am I talking about this is that my column.
Is Brian there? And we're back.
So the reason that I am thinking about and writing about imperfections is that I think it's a common theme in the lives of older people. And I write always with the hope that people will resonate with what I say. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, he said exactly what, I'm feeling,
Yeah. It has been, presence has been something that I've been very focused on and trying to be more and more consistent with being present. And part of being present is this idea of being perfect in presence. Mm. And I've been sitting and listening with Matt Kahn, who is similar to August Gold, a spiritual teacher, a mystic. And he has offered up this teaching. Can you love yourself as the imperfect self now, while you are working towards that more perfect version of you in the future?
And I think that's great.
And I think it is that very much. Can you sit with yourself right now as the imperfect, as you are just right now, and be okay with it? And I don't know if it's an aging thing. I think when I look at it, I see it more as a collective kind of, collectively, we're starting to come into that space of what does it mean to be present? What does it mean to be authentic? And can you actually say that I love myself if you're judging yourself differently in the present versus the future?
And there is no future.
There is no future, so you may as well love yourself now.
Yeah, there is no future. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Because the only thing that exists is this moment.
This moment.
Let me, if I could, share with you what August said with our group on Tuesday, is that the thing that takes us away from the moment is thought. Mm-hmm. And we have 800 thoughts in a couple of days. I mean, and she had the whole group close their eyes, and every time a thought came into their head, say the word thought, because if you're aware that your thinking is taking you away, right? Creating dramas, going back to talk about past dramas, 30 years ago, whatever, you can't be present.
You can't be present.
It can't be present.
There are no thoughts about the present.
No, even thinking that you're not doing it right is a thought.
Yeah.
Right. So she asked us to, feel the electricity in our hands. What did it feel like? And she said, that's happening in your whole body all the time, but we're not aware of it because we're not present. What do you think about that?
It very much resonates with me. And it is, the idea that the present has no thoughts. Every time we're having a thought, it's either of the past or the future.
Yes.
And then we create some drama about that, and we're all the way over there because we're trying to make ourselves better. We're trying to say that there is a better version of me, and when I reach that better version of me, I'll be happier, I'll be richer, I'll be more successful. Then people will listen to me, or then this will happen. And I think, the journey and spirituality, whichever way you look at it, very quickly can encourage people and inspire people to be always manifesting something. Always be conscious of your words because you're manifesting something in the future. Always be conscious of your thoughts because you're manifesting something in the future. And I think it's sort of one of the realizations that I've had this last week has been really to, bring it back and be very conscious of, are you focusing on manifesting or are you focusing on right now? And I've been looking at all of the, when you think about like the world that you create and like attracts like, and I look at the things that come into my world, almost every single one of them is about manifesting, creating something. Meditate now so you can create your world.
Mm-hmm. Or meditate now so that you can say you meditated.
Yeah. And I was just,
that you're
really
authentic.
Hit me that I don't think there's that broader message out there saying, just be present because it's enough.
It is enough.
Meditate because right now is enough.
And there, you need nothing more to be happy. Even in crises, even in tragedy.
Right.
If you are in the moment, you have what you need to do what you need to do.
And I think if you're in the moment, because there is that sort of very fine line between I'm just going to be present and not do anything. And suddenly you're lazy.
Yeah, that's not, yeah.
And I think August Gold's teaching is when you're present and you're feeling the electricity in your body, you're able to then be aware of the inspired action. Did we lose you, Brian? And we're back again.
Yeah. Hayley, can you repeat what you said about that sitting as you are without self-consciousness, about not being perfect yet? Say more about that, would you?
What I've noticed in all of the work that I've done myself and the people that I have learned from, as well as the people that come to me for me to help them, is that there's this constant seeking, this constant striving to be better, to achieve that version of yourself that is enough. So the most common question is, how do I manifest? How do I reach that version of myself that is the best possible version of myself? And just this week, I was sitting with myself with that question about, am I truly being present if I'm only being present to be better in the future? And that question means, really, it means if I think I'm sitting to be better in the future, to reach my perfection in the future, how much love am I giving to myself right now? I'm basically saying to myself, right now you kind of suck, but it's okay. There's a better version of you out there.
Well, while I was walking Lincoln the other night, I gave myself a grade on spirituality.
What did you end up with?
I thought, you're a B. maybe a B plus, but what I want is to be A plus plus plus,
plus.
like Ralphie in A Christmas Story, A plus 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 plus. And part of this discussion is really relevant for me, because I don't know if it was August or someone else was talking about blessing yourself. Do you give yourself credit? Do you ever stop what you're doing and say, you know what? You do pretty good. I mean, you're a good person. Your intentions are good. You're good to people. You should be happy with that. You should be glad that you're that kind of person. And the thought comes up, yeah, but what more is there?
What more can you do?
What more can I do? How long is it before I'm an A? What book do I need to read? What person do I need to listen to? Right? Right? So
totally. And I think that's the striving. I think striving is helpful because we are in a continuous process. We are in a process. So there's always change around us. And we're here to really understand who we are and if we can achieve that potential. But if we're constantly striving, I mean, what does that mean? It seems just, I mean, like, and I'm saying this because this was my own realization of myself. That seems hypocritical.
Well, it takes you out of the moment.
It totally does. And isn't all of this about being present?
It is. It's about, your grade that you're going to get is right now.
Right now. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters, is right this moment. So, giving you an example, let's say Ray walks in the door and I'm thinking, I should go meditate, right? I need time for myself. I need the experience of withdrawal. But he's in need of something, right? And there's stuff cooking on the stove and the dog, wants a treat. I feel that where I need to be present is to them, to the dog, to the sauce on the stove, to Ray and his need, and do it the best I can, right? And that's even better. That is a meditation, right? Because I'm being fully present to what's in front of me. This is my garden right here. This is the garden.
I think where I'm being super conscious of myself is making sure that I'm present with myself first while I'm being present with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see myself leaping into, let me go do this for them. And I'm not being conscious of where I am in it.
Yeah.
And I think I have to be, this is where I'm pushing myself, is to really be present with when you're helping somebody. Are you still present with yourself while you're helping them? Or have you now said that once I help them, then I'll be able to be present with myself?
Yeah. And so I agree with you. And that's why I love the I'm just here mantra, because if you remember to say it, it brings you back.
You drop back in.
And the I'm just here,
I am.
makes it's about you. I am just here, Brian, here. You're with Hayley. You're not thinking about dinner tonight. You have this incredible opportunity to, be with Hayley, and Hayley be with you, and Hayley get the best of you, right?
Yeah, and for you to get the best of you.
Yeah.
And again, I think when we talk about the I am, it is you. It is that individual self. And this is a solo journey where we're walking this journey and we're questioning these things ourselves so that I, as the individual, have the best possible experience.
Yes. And I think, go ahead.
The natural benefit of that is everybody around us, because even though we walk alone, we are surrounded by others. the natural benefit is that they benefit just from you being able to say, like, I'm really enjoying myself.
Yes. And for me, Hayley, it really helps to have a good sense of humor about it.
You gotta.
I'll say, listen, you can't get any better than I am right now. So you want to see the best, here it is. And they'll laugh, and I'm joking, obviously.
We are having internet problems today.
You got to. So going back, just for the record, if anyone's wondering, Hayley and I have been disconnected like 5 times in this conversation. And getting, for some reason, we don't know who's, at what end. It doesn't matter what end it's at.
It doesn't.
But I said to Hayley, I can't think of anyone I'd rather go through the experience with than her. You have such lovely positive energy, and you reminded me that there's a message in this. And you know what? The message is imperfection.
Imperfection of the present moment, and find the hilarity. It's hilarious.
Yes, it's Wabi-Sabi, imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete.
I think that's a wonderful day to end. And let's go have a great week of imperfection and really loving ourselves as we are.
As we are.
Wabi-Sabi.
Wabi-Sabi.
Even sounds fun.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Have a lovely one, Brian. Lots of love to you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.